I want first to look at the frame, and one of the beliefs that we hold true here in our training: if so above, so below, so above; if so within, so without. Well, if we think about it, there was a time not so long ago, we're talking up until the 1900s, that it was a common and thriving practice of leeching. In France alone, over 42 million leeches were estimated to be imported each year to support the practice. It was such a thriving practice that leeches become a novelty. They become hard to come by. And it was believed at the time that the illnesses came from having too much blood in the body. And this is because our common technology of the time was hydraulics. We were just becoming aware of what hydraulics were. And it's said that we understand how the body and the mind works at the level of technology that we're currently working at. I mean, up until the 2nd century, we believed that the world was the center of the universe. Now, this belief was just as strong for those people as your belief when you think the sun is going to come up tomorrow. I mean, think about the belief that you hold that the sun is going to come up tomorrow. This frame of reference dictated the very experience of the people of the time that they lived out of. Now, see, you might think that these people were stupid, but I'd suggest it's more important of a point of ignorance. This is when we see something that's right in front of our faces, but we are ignorant that it is so. See, we all suffer from a cognitive error called the myth of knowledge. This is where we think we know the way things are, but we're ignorant in that belief. Think of a time when maybe you were blind to someone else's intention, both good and bad. Maybe you fell in love with the wrong person, or you should have trusted someone that you didn't. Isn't it true that your frame of reference, the story that you lived out of, got completely shifted once you realized you had misunderstood the situation? See, when we hold a myth to be true, our default mode network becomes locked in that frame, and any anticipation, any predictions, any possibilities, any review of the past becomes framed in that myth. For example, if you hold the belief, the identity that you're a victim, which I believe is one of the predominant programming that our society has today, everything that you experience will come from the identity of the victim. And if you have an identity of the victim, what is the plot that you're living out of? The current, the now that you're living out of? And what are the stories that you create? And notice how we have this biofeedback where your belief becomes your experience and your experience becomes your belief. All because this myth is playing out in your head. This is not even considering the power of synchronicity, where things come into our awareness, come into our experience based upon what we're thinking of at the time. See, Shakespeare wrote, "There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamed about in your philosophy." This is equally true today, and it's absolutely true in your life. When you shift the frame of reference in this way, when you shift down at this level, it can be much like an earthquake in your life. Everything, your entire view of reality can shift in an instant. This is true in the negative context like the previous examples, or in what I call Shazam moments. These are those positive moments where you shift into empowerment. You own some part of yourself that you've never owned before. And the reason why is because this change is done at the deep level where the tectonics of your experience sit. And when you shift the tectonics, there's an earthquake up in your consciousness. Because when you change the way that you look at things, the things you look at change. So ask yourself, what are some myths that you live out of? What are some common identities? If I were to ask you to just respond, who are you? And think of it, I am, and then your name, and then go deeper. I am, and then what else? Who are you? And start to look at what are the identities, the characters that you've lived out of just over the past month. And look and see how those characters then changed the plot, the narrative, the way that you saw the now. And through that, isn't it true that you created meaning, stories based upon those beliefs. And then that belief then became a biofeedback where you started to then experience the world. Now ask yourself, what are the positive identities that you could live out of? What is the plot that you've lived out of over the past month that's worked for you, that's given you the experience? Maybe you, as a father or a mother or a parent or a coach or a guide or some situation where you brought on an identity that served you, and that identity then drove the plot, the experience of the reality you were living in. If we think of just like being a mother or a father, being a parent, and we think of when you're just sitting here, like right now, if one of my kids had one of those cries, of oh hey, there's something wrong. Isn't it true that everything in my awareness, my entire identity would shift, and that sacred identity of a parent would come online? It would change the plot, it would change the story, and it would change. Isn't it true that you would do everything in your power to take care of your kid? That's true, isn't it? And so that's a sacred identity. What are some of the sacred identities that you have lived out of just over the past month? And what would it look like if you allowed those sacred identities to take hold in those areas of your life where you were living out of a lower identity, one that didn't serve you, maybe a victim, a loser, something to that effect?